Yeah, honestly, I don't know how you want me to follow up that opening, but the D-Dart Blaster, which I saw a lot of potential in once I understood how this thing worked, and, well, as you can see from the opening shots, I turned it into an absolute monster. This is seriously, it's not going to be for everyone, but holy crud, where to begin? Well, this is a D-Dart, this is a stock one, and it's an interesting blaster. It does something that, a lot of other blasters don't do. For something so small and compact, but its entire operational mechanism is basically this plastic spring on the back of it that when this turret is rotated by an electronic gearbox, it will slam forward like that, kind of like a firearm, and that will push the dart into the flywheel and propel the dart out of the blaster. And since that's a really simple mechanism, I figured out that if you literally grab the side of the turret and just crank it, it will fire about as fast as you could turn the entire cylinder. I mean, there is going to be some kind of diminishing returns, and probably you're not going to be hitting darts all that well if you go up to an insane speed, but I clocked in the opening video at about 25 darts a second. It was about 28 darts in 1.13 seconds, so it's probably even possible to get these things hitting even faster, but I think you're going to start running into some problems if this hammer doesn't fully reset in every single time you shoot it. But I mean, maybe that isn't an issue. I don't know. I haven't taken it faster than that. I'm kind of wondering if I should put like a honey badger or something in the pusher box. And yes, I did do a complete modification to the one we're actually going to talk about, which is this one right here. So there are things that I haven't quite figured out how I'm going to deal with yet, and I would like to get some opinions on that, but there are things I have figured out, starting, most importantly, with the flywheels and the flywheel cage. About 2 or 3 days after I put up my video, Michelle from Foam Blast answered my prayers once again and had designed a complete cage, this being her one that she said, it's a beta, you can test it out, and I did, and it worked. It fits in here like a glove, and so for the actual flywheel cage and everything like that, I used Containment Crew Cyclone wheels because I had quite a few left over, and I really like those wheels because they're big and beefy and cool. And then I used Krakens for the motors because Krakens are a 3S motor that is like insanely strong with a lot of torque, and that's what I needed with something that was going to fire really quickly. Darts are going to be slamming through these wheels very, very fast, and that's going to input a lot of drag on the wheels, and the motors have to keep up with that, so we need something that's beefy and strong. And the only battery, honestly, I could figure out that would fit in here is the one that I currently use for my Hurricane. This is a 500 milliamp hour Turnigy Bolt, a 3S. This is a cool little battery, it fits in there. It's a little tricky, as you can see. I've got a custom XT60 connector on here, and it does fit in there, but only just barely. Which is kind of a shame, because that's the only one I could really find to fit in here. There isn't a whole lot of room after you get things said and done to do really anything else with the blaster. A lot of people are also wondering, like, how much of this handle, this grip, is necessary, and, well, pretty much all of it, because right here you've got the battery compartment, right here you're going to have the gearbox for the actual rotation mechanism, and then of course you've got motors that are going to hang down on top of that, plus room for switches. Like, this is the, of course, still on-off switch. There is no rev trigger yet. I think it would be possible to put a rev trigger right here, but you're talking about, you're just going to want a very, very small push button setup because there is not a whole lot of room in this shell. But I honestly think it would be completely doable, and, well, it's gonna have to happen because this thing is awesome. And of course, by stock, this thing does not use full length or standard length foam darts, which is a bit of a shame because, well, they're the standard and they're really good, like these Adventure Force Waffles, which are pretty much the best darts in the hobby right now. Yeah, and as you can see, I have cut off the front kind of guard right here, and my reasoning for that was pretty simple, because even if you have like these darts right here, for instance, if any of these darts kind of get pushed forward too much, and, you know, just like too far forward, example, what will happen is the hammer won't actually reach the back of the dart, and you're gonna wind up with probably a jammed blaster anyway. So I cut off the front ring. Optimally, if you could get a ring that is just the perfect length, something, and I mean, this shouldn't be that hard to do. You can probably just glue something on here or 3D print it, I would hope. especially since there's holes right here for that kind of stuff. Anyway, the point is, if you had some kind of perfectly done ring, well, you might not have to deal with any kind of drag from the dart heads hitting that ring, the guard on it, and that would probably help. But right now, I mean, it's pretty good. There are darts that are going to fall out, but just using the stock dart fit is working fine enough for me. It's not perfect, and you're gonna want to use kind of fresh darts, but it works, and that's the most important thing. But other than that, the only thing I've done is the new cage, the wheels, the motors, and of course, I upgraded the gearbox inside. And the gearbox inside is one of those TT gearboxes that you see if you buy like one of the cheap Strife kits or something like that, like a 3D printed automatics fire kit for your Strife. They're the yellow gearboxes with a little motor sticking out the bottom of them, which work pretty darn good, but they're really cheap. They're not exactly all that reliable and so forth and so forth, but I put a Valkyrie in one and glued the pinion gear onto it, and it seems to work fine. Just make sure you grease the heck out of all the little gears inside that, because it's spinning really fast, and that did increase the fire rate on this blaster quite considerably. So here are the upgraded wiring and internals for the D-Dart here. We've got a Valkyrie for the pusher. I've had to literally super glue the pinion onto that. Greased all of the gears inside of there very well. We've got whatever the 42.5mm cage Michelle printed out with Krakens and with Cyclones on it from Containment Crew, because I had a pair. Well, you can see one of them is kind of iffy, and I don't know if that's the cage or what, but it should work fine for our purposes anyway. Same switch, same wiring. We've got pretty much the exact same wiring, so we've got positive from the battery going to the on-off switch, which then also goes to the trigger, to the common on the trigger, and of course to the positive on the flywheels. Negative from the flywheels goes back down to the pusher motor and then back down to the battery connector, and then switch right here is just the positive from the switch, goes to the common on that, and then the normally open, we put that to the positive on the pusher, so still no rev trigger unfortunately, but I don't really think this thing's ever going to be worthy of using a rev trigger, to be perfectly honest. The way this blaster is designed, it's pretty much a pretty good secondary, basically, and it's gonna dump darts like no tomorrow. This battery right here, which is a 500 milliamp hour bolt from Turnigy, will fit in here with the connector. It's a very, very tight squeeze. I've even removed some of that down in there just to make room. Also, to fit that cage in there, you need to trim out these two things on both sides, those ribbings, because that will make it much, much easier to fit that cage in there, because the original motors are slightly smaller, even though they are 130 size. They're designed a little bit differently, but this should be perfectly good. Now just put the thing back together and see exactly how many darts we can dump. As you can tell, this is kind of a tight fit, but it does go in there. You just kind of put it in there like that. We can put that in there like that, kind of squish that down, put the connector down in there a little bit more. Come on, stay down there. Clips that closed, we can go ahead and screw this back down, and now she's ready to slay. So, just a quick little firing demo. I'm gonna grab a box here, or else the darts are gonna go everywhere. You are gonna wanna make sure that all the darts are pushed down, and well, we need to figure out a way as a community to fix that, because I tried little bits of hot glue in here, and well, if the little bit of friction will help, but if there's just a tad bit too much, well, the darts won't push all the way out and they won't go into the flywheels, and that just causes even more problems. But yeah, that's fast. That is insanely fast. And what would something like this be useful for? Well, a lot of people that, when the video of mine that I posted kind of got posted everywhere on the internet, yeah, this is kind of meant to be a secondary, most likely a horde buster, squad buster, a room clearing device. Really, that's what this thing excels at. It's not entirely meant to be something that you could just rattle off single shots, which would be cool, but unfortunately the way the gearbox works is that no matter what, even if I let go of the trigger, the gearbox is still going to kind of spin a little bit, and that imparts a lot of spin to the drums. So like when you let go of the trigger, it's gonna still shoot like 2 to 3 more darts. I don't see a good way of making this like a heavy semi-auto unless you wanted to put in a different gearbox with like More torque, that is entirely possible you could do, but then you kind of miss out on the whole, it shoots darts insanely fast. This could be too fast for a lot of people. Again, that was 28 darts. So realistically, what could be done with this blaster besides the fact that it spews out darts ridiculously fast? And then I have to go back to the fact that it is a fully electronic blaster, and the cool thing about electricity is you can do a lot of fun stuff with it because you don't necessarily have to have everything contained right in here. So, if you wanted to do something crazy like making a remote firing device with like a, remote wireless that you could use to trigger it, that is an option. If you wanted to have some kind of infrared detection thing on it, I was thinking something along the lines of this would be a cool blaster to have some kind of mount on the back of it that would allow you to kind of stick it to objects like a big suction cup or something and just have an IR beam in front of it, so if anybody walks by, it just fires. It just switches on and fires and then switches off, and that would be really, really cool for something like this. Or, of course, if you wanted to mount it somewhere on either a blaster or your body, it would be incredibly easy to do so. Just make sure that you have a bit of a gap behind this actual turret, which is not that bad. You'd only be increasing it by just like, half an inch or so. That is also a possibility with this thing. It isn't exactly feasible to get rid of the grip. Even if you were to get rid of the gearbox and try to reverse it, so it would be coming out this direction, you'd still have the flywheels up there. And I mean, yeah, you could get a bit of it gone, but I honestly don't know where to begin with kind of switching this whole rotation mechanism around. I'm sure there's a way to do it. I just can't think of anything right off the top of my head that would be as effective. And again, I think this is hitting the upper limits of what this blaster is capable of fire rate wise, because if it fires exactly too fast and this doesn't reset fully because the turret is just spinning so insanely quickly, that might be an issue. That being said, I think it can go faster with the right tools and materials, but what I did inside this thing was exceptionally easy. It didn't take me very long at all. There was some minor complications trying to figure out how this thing worked, but after you figure it out and you understand how the wiring's gonna go, it's honestly not that difficult, and the gains are huge because, like I said, there are few blasters that are this small, this compact, that fire this quickly, and this velocity, because of course upgraded flywheels are also going to give you better distance. I will have a link to everything like the D-Dart and the flywheel cage and stuff down in the description below. It is a beta flywheel cage, but it does fit in here really good, and I think in the near future this thing will evolve and do some more crazy stuff, but as of right now, really, you could probably throw this one together in about an hour or so if you have decent soldering skills, and it would be really worthwhile to do so because it's super duper cool. And I can't wait to actually just shoot clouds of darts at people. Like I said, the only thing I really want, even though like rev trigger would be great, I think the one thing I want right now is something that can be put in here, like glued in or friction fit into these holes right here, that would give you a slightly bigger gate for all the darts. That way you could put full lengths in it. I think that would be a relatively simple thing to do, but I don't do well with 3D designing, unfortunately, so I'm hoping somebody else who actually has talent that could whip it up in a little bit. But I've talked on long enough. I'm Walcom S7. Thank you very much for watching this video, and of course, I hope to see you in an entirely different one.
You gotta up, up.